just so we can focus on how the session will flow, we are going to talk about a current event that I'm sure on everyone's mind. We are all following the news. Russia has invaded Ukraine. And I just wanted to look at this through the supply chain lens to say, how does this impact supply chains, right? This event, what are the sourcing relationships Russia or Ukraine provide to the rest of the world and how they are addressed. And then, given we've probably all overused the whole idea of COVID impact on supply chains, and these disruptions, whether man-made or not, are increasing in frequency, right? Increasing in the scale, the impact they carry. How do supply chains cope with this? Right? It's not a stable, predictable world anymore, where you can just say, well, what happened last summer is what will happen this summer. It doesn't work like that anymore. And how the world's moving from those kind of stable, traditional planning paradigms to more automated planning paradigm. I've got a customer example of autonomous planning and how it can be applied. So I'll share that with you as well. And then I'll try to talk to the students in terms of, as you are looking to go into this autonomous feature space, how do you prepare, right? Because it's, the traditional skills, let's say, aren't going to be sufficient anymore. And then what I wanted to do was give people a sense of GitaCloud as an organization. We do have an internship program for 2022. So if there are any students who would like to take advantage of this program, then happy to also present some of those opportunities. And then, like I said, we will make this very interactive. Learn from each other, right? I'm sure no one here has all the answers. So the intent would be to say, what are you seeing and what questions can we discuss as well? All right, so let's jump into the first topic, which is Russia invades Ukraine. Right? How does this impact supply chains? So as we are all aware, West has introduced sanctions against Russia, and that basically means all the energy producers, the pipelines, the metals, mining, all the stuff that comes out of Russia is probably not going to come out so easily and so freely. Let's look at it through multiple impacts. There is a oil and gas supply impact. There is a raw material commodity pricing impact. There is a cyber warfare risk. So I just wanted to cover at a high level so students can kind of see how what's happening right now can be so much more impactful than obviously the human misery and toll is terrible and it's unforgivable. But just broader than the toll on Ukrainians right now, there is a toll on the world as well. So Russia, if you understand, is the third largest oil producer and the second largest oil exporter. They produce more than 5 million barrels through daily. And they also provide a lot of liquid natural gas, right? Third of what European Union needs. So they are a major supplier of oil and gas to the world, right? Nord Stream 2 pipeline that they had as a strategy to bypass Ukraine and Poland and go straight to consumers like Germany. That certification has been paused and likely not to get cleared anytime soon. So that basically means 55 billion cubic meters of annual gas supply is now on hold. And just to put a perspective around that number, that's 50% of Germany's annual consumption. So suddenly you have to think of all this gas not going into Europe. How are Europeans going to cope with their energy needs, right? The oil and gas inventories in general, we have been following this space closely. The inventories are low. There's high risk of oil stockpiling that's going to occur now, partly because of these concerns, partly because of high pricing seen in the future, and that's reflected in the Brent already, right? It was 65 in December, it's 105 now, and projections are it could touch 150 later this year. So prices were last this high 8-10 years back, right? Major event. What does this mean? High gas prices obviously mean high transportation costs, right? Everything moves through something driven by gas, and this means supply chains going to impact, feel the impact globally. other side impact, which was interesting to me as I was consuming this article from Forbes, that there is a lot of natural gas factored into the electricity generation in Europe as well, right? So 40% of electricity being generated in Europe is from natural gas, and that also is impacted. Rising electricity prices fairly on the horizon. In the last point I wanted to make was pure war risk, where the pipeline, the Nord Stream 1 that flows through, not Nord Stream 1, the Ukraine pipeline, someone in Ukraine could decide to blow it up, and that's 10% of gas supply from Russia into European Union. So there's high risk of disruption, either because of Russia restricting EU exports or action from Ukraine. Bottom line, there's dire impact for EU and Russia. Having understood the oil and gas supply impacts and the pricing inflation aspects of things, let's look at the raw material commodity supply chain impacts. So people have done this kind of supply chain multi-tier risk analysis on Russia, and very few firms from a US and EU doing direct business with Russia. Very, very mild impact. Right? That's good news. But the moment you look at tier 2 and 3 here, you can see that number grows from 2.1K to 190K. There are 190,000 firms that have at least one tier 3 supplier in Russia. So, or 15,000 tier 2 suppliers in Ukraine. So this you can clearly see is where the risk is, not with your direct supplier, but with the supplier's supplier. Food inflation risk is also there. Ukraine happens to be the third largest corn exporter. They're very big on barley and rye. Russia obviously is the largest wheat exporter. So as the sanctions hit, this food supply to the world is at risk and is likely to lead to some severe shortages down the line. If you look at it from the metal market perspective, Russia controls 10% of global copper reserves, 35% of palladium that's used today in high tech. US imports 10% of its aluminum from Russia today. So obviously all of this is at risk. Aluminum hasn't been sanctioned, yes, at least till yesterday, but all of these challenges, aluminum as a product goes into everything from iPhones to your automobiles to your jet fighters, and it's not so easy to just shut these incoming supplies down and expect no impact on supply chains. And metals, you can already see nickel's trading at a 11-year high. Price increases are likely for aluminum. Another sourcing relationship, which is very interesting, is the neon gas that Ukraine provides to the world, 90% of it. This goes into the semiconductor manufacturing process. The gas and the lasers come together to inscribe on chips, and that is also a challenge. The picture I'm trying to draw is that there are a lot of critical materials in supply chains that absolutely come from these places in large volumes and are at risk today. And if you look at the cyber warfare risk, this is probably the highest impact item. Russia has, as you can imagine, one of the highest developed cyber warfare capabilities, along with the US, China, and maybe Israel. And it used it to attack Georgia in 2008, Ukraine in 2014, the whole cyber snake operation they did. And even in 2017, the new Petty attack, where companies like Merck, Merck's reported combined $7.3 billion worth of impact. So it's a very big deal. They could literally shut operations down for the rest of the world if they wanted to, if it escalated beyond Ukraine. The risk we are seeing is in the public cloud enterprise software players. And as you know, SAP to Salesforce to Oracle, everyone's big on the cloud, and they will have to really watch the risk of those systems being attacked. This is seen as one of the highest impact items globally. You don't need to invade countries anymore. You can invade through the cyber. So hopefully this paints a clear picture, at least in a current event way. what I now want to do is sort of switch gears to more a supply chain focus and say, sure, disruptions are increasing, high volume, high velocity, bigger impact events. How do we cope really? How do we think about planning? And in order to do that, let's first understand where we've been to understand where we are going. Traditional planning, or where we've been. By traditional planning, we mean both ERP and so-called quote-unquote advanced planning or integrated business planning. In the end, if you look at these boxes and how people were really planning using these capabilities, highly manual, lots of data collections, lots of spreadsheets still woven into the process, and analytics and putting the data together, reportable to executives, took bulk of the effort. Sorry, was there a question there?
No, I think.
All right. So let's just say that we have in the past been very ERP or simple spreadsheet on the cloud type systems, essentially still leaving humans in charge to do most of the work, most of the thinking. And it was very enterprise centric, very ERP data oriented. And what it did is it introduced lots of firefighting in the actual execution, because assumptions based on past converted into plans just didn't align with reality very well. And as reality was significantly different, lots of firefighting to react. Coordinate with suppliers, coordinate with logistics providers, with manufacturing shop floors to say, I need something fundamentally different than what I told you last week or last month. So these traditional planning processes are very process cadence oriented, monthly SNOP or weekly, very meeting heavy to say, well, let's have a demand review, and then we'll water flow down to a supply review, and then do a finance review, and then an executive review. I mean, that's assuming that demand remains intact and stable for you by the time it gets to the executives. It doesn't, right? So this whole idea of monthly process cadence is proving to be very ineffective. Also, most of the planning was owned by supply chain and operations, not really embedding the sales and marketing functions very well, customers very well, even suppliers very well. So it wasn't really the network planning that it was trying to model. And also, most companies moved from ERP to advanced planning or integrated business planning as a sort of one-time digital transformation effort. And all they did is they adopted some static black boxes, called it optimization, but essentially they were just very static master data values going into it, no real continual refinement of the model happening to keep it aligned to reality. So let's look at what autonomous planning provides in contrast. This is where the world is going. Highly automated, highly feature-centric, and very network-centric. So not just staying within the enterprise four walls, but going into what's happening in my channel, what's happening with my retailers, what's happening with my consumers, full demand visibility all the way down, what's happening with my suppliers, both tier one and further upstream suppliers, just very end-to-end value network focused. And a streaming data architecture, which is not enterprise-centric, not ERP-oriented, but ability to receive data from multiple enterprises, multiple systems in a web-based enterprise control tower, now becoming a network control. Advanced analytics, AI/ML based, so demand, supply, inventory optimization as a whole, not sequential. The ability to understand how a supply shortage leads to shaping demand into products which have extra supply and away from products which are going to be short. So just really interconnecting these dots. Streamlining the demand sensing, production scheduling, order promising, all the elements of operational planning in a single whole. And planners move away from the kind of huge data collection, analysis, spreadsheet-like work and manual thinking and entering numbers in cells to a let the engine do the planning and throw a bunch of exceptions where it wants me to take actions or validate the recommended action. And also on a lot of risk modeling, right? So now the engine doesn't know that there is a war. So planner's job to go and put this in to say, well, what if I don't get my palladium for the next 3 months, or what if I get my energy commodity costs to be 15% higher? What does it mean to my margin? Doing risk modeling. The focus autonomous planning has is decision automation wherever possible. If it's, and you can think of it almost like a purchase acquisition approval policy, right? Where you decide tiers to say if it's below this level, then this level can approve it, then let the software automatically execute decisions which don't impact materially. When they do, create the same hierarchy to say who needs to be an approval. Bottom line is it's always on event-based planning. No need for these monthly, weekly cadence meetings. If a big order comes in, it gets planned right away. The ripple effect is understood right away, and then someone needs to approve, and that order automatically gets planned. And obviously, for it to be acceptable, automated like that, the focus moves away just from supply chain operations to very enterprise-wide and maybe even network-wide KPI alignment, and integrate that KPI projection into the decision making. Say, where do I get my revenue, my customer service, my margin optimized as a full supply network? And then automation of scenario modeling. So earlier, the focus was on a lot of what if scenario modeling. Now we are basically saying, let the tool understand, for example, if it's seen that the lead times modeled are varying quite a bit. With COVID, this happened a lot. With port congestion, lead times went for a toss. Let the tool understand the variability and start doing auto modeling to say, well, you model this component, I can get in 8 weeks from China. I don't see that happening. It's been 12 weeks, 14 weeks. And assume if that happens in future, what would happen? So be able to come up with the range plans, not point plans, and say, well, this is my full range of potential demand and supply and inventory, and take financial decisions. And one big difference in autonomous planning mindset is also that you will need as most organizations have realized, a team of data scientists, citizen planner data scientists, or people who only do data science 24/7 to continually learn, continually refine, and keep making these prediction models more and more aligned to reality. So there's been a saying that plans are great till the battle starts, and that's for the traditional planning age. The planning we're talking about is essentially taking battle data into account and planning based on. So if you look at how the concept of automation has evolved the last 10 years, we saw a lot of process automation focus, and we are going into a lot of decision automation. Process automation was essentially a lot of hyper automation of repetitive tasks, if you will. When you had stable processes with 50 steps, yeah, you could say if this happens, then do that kind of rules and automate it. And this worked well in case of stable, well-defined, tightly managed process environments. That the more disruptions occur, the harder it is to operate like that. Decision automation goes more into the touchless planning, incomplete data. I may not have all the information. I try to scrape the web and try and get, for example, information on how my competitors are promoting their products, right? Not just how I'm planning to promote my products. So competitors not going to send you a spreadsheet with their promotions, but all their pricing, all their promotions is available on the web. And there are technologies like Bright Data and others that can data scrape this whole set of intelligent data and bring it in. Essentially, you're looking to create a digital twin of your entire reality, your demand network, your supply network, and understand what's happening to it. Store all the decision history. This is a major one, right? The last generation solutions just only looked at what's the latest demand, what do I need to solve for, not when this situation occurred 3 months ago, what did I do? Yeah. What 3 options did I recommend? Which one did the planners choose? And understanding that behavior, like humans learn, human-like learning skills. So we just don't have sophisticated data mining. We also have this kind of learning from how planners have been deciding on the recommendations and becoming more and more automated in a way to always propose the right recommended action and tracking this. So orchestrate execution, not just to recommend, not just decision support, but full decision orchestration. So once the planner says, yep, this sounds good to me, or if the decision is below a certain margin and revenue impact and is auto-executed, taking that and executing across multiple enterprises, ERP systems, and synchronizing everything. I made this point before, continuous learning and decision refinements. Essentially, what you're saying is you'll have these black swan events, right? Like the war, and you have to unlock the decision velocity and deliver the business agility needed. So these disruptions do not translate into any hit to the guidance to the street. So that's all great. That's all. Hopefully, it paints a picture of where the world is going from the basics of it. Let's look at a real world example. One of our large customers, this is a problem statement where they have a elaborate set of delivering plants, if you will, where product is stored, not produced, but stored. And delivery, customers take it from these delivering plants. Now, there are several surprises in the moment for these plants. There can be a unplanned shutdown that occurs or a planned shutdown request. There can be product mix issues where certain products can only be loaded from certain loading bays, and the demand mix and the loading resource availability doesn't align with each other very well. There can be supply shortages of a particular type of product. There can be increased last minute in customer demand to say, I want more or I want it sooner. Essentially, both the demand and the supply can misbehave without any notice. When they do, you still are on the hook to deliver the product, keep the customer satisfaction high. And the problem statement for the customer was that they were getting all these requests, but they had no visibility into the real-time execution status. They had visibility into a so-called optimized supply plan, optimized delivery plan developed 7 days ago, 15 days ago, but no real visibility into what's happening right now and how long are the trucks waiting, for example, how loading bays are being utilized effectively or not, where we have pending orders because of supply shortages and so on. And asking planners to talk to a bunch of folks, manually put data in a spreadsheet and figure out what is the right response action, it was just too cumbersome, too ineffective, too inefficient. So they came to the realization that they need a supply chain control tower, which will bring in all the latest customer demands, latest supply situation, the delivering plant capacity in terms of opening hours, number of people, loading resource availability, create a full digital twin of their entire supply network. And then real-time monitoring and rebalancing to say, okay, it's not just enough to deliver this kind of visibility. Visibility is great, but not without prescription, not without action. So we want, along with this visibility that the twin provides, also a auto rebalancing, event-driven real-time of if this is the new demand request, when can I service it? If I can service it from the plant I thought I was going to service it from, then which other plant can I use? And what is the hit because the truck now has to travel 60 miles away to this other plant, and factor all that in. And taking all these scenarios into account to say I could simply push supplies to a different plant, I could push demand to a later day, I could reassign the loading resources to change my loading mix, and not blindly assume any option to be the preferred option, but evaluate every option from a on-time delivery, revenue margin, resource utilization perspective, and coming out with the most optimal answer every time. And also any change has a ripple effect, right? If you're going to send demand to an alternative plant, that alternative plant already has a bunch of other demands, and now they may not be prepared for this demand. So plan and resolve, including the ripple effect across the network, not just solve it for a given plant or for a given product. So this decision recommendation then ought to executing it back, redirecting supplies, confirming orders differently, communicating back to the customers, and then forecasting and tracking KPIs to say, well, what are the trends on my on-time delivery, my resource utilization, my truck wait times, and with this plan, where are they trended? Am I looking at a problem 3 days out, a stock out at one of the plants? So just the ability to react to alerts, not based on what's broken now, but what is going to break if you follow these plans. So you can see this is very efficient, very effective for the planners who are just constantly firefighting and challenged to now essentially say, all I'm doing is I'm watching the GPS, I'm making sure that it's going to get me there in a reasonable amount of time. And if not, then I'll take control. But otherwise, I see what it's doing, right? It's real time suggesting I take alternative routes. All I do is I say, yep, accept. So now let's focus on the students to say, and my apologies if this was a lot, there's some very advanced concepts in there. Hopefully you caught most of it. Just think of the essential challenge most organizations are dealing with today are twofold. One is the supply chain execution side of things, the shop floor, the warehouses. Most of the young talent doesn't want to go into those jobs, right? The hard hat jobs, and they are getting more and more automated as a result, right? Robots are running warehouses today, manufacturing floors today, will be running logistics and trucks in the future. So those are not exciting jobs. The excitement is more in this kind of supply chain planning space, not in the execution space. In the planning space, the skill set that planners had till date was more of a spreadsheet heavy, meeting heavy skill set, dealing with a very narrow vision of what matters, what's my world, and that's all going to go away. The skills needed from planners going forward are going to be fundamentally different. Most digital transformation charters, when companies did the last 10 years of digital transformation, very focused on tools, maybe processes, but surprisingly not so much on humans to say, well, what kind of upskilling really needs to be done. The same planner who's just been comfortable with a spreadsheet all his life isn't suddenly going to be comfortable with a AI machine learning signal and be expected to help fine tune the model. It's not easy. Also, if you think about the human dynamic, the AI-driven cognitive automation to say, well, someone else will do the planning and auto-execute the decisions is perceived as a little bit of Terminator Rise of the Machines, right? To say, well, what am I going to do? And this results in change resistance to translate the tribal knowledge planners have into these cognitive systems. So they essentially take more of a, yeah, you think you're smart, let's see what you can produce, and then I'll show you where you went wrong. As opposed to saying, what could I tell you up front that would have made sure you would have considered that dynamic into this also. So as we talked before, skills needed in the past were very S&OP process coordination centric, training ERP data and spreadsheets, very enterprise centric planning, preparing executive dashboards, lots of firefighting. Way forward, where you will need to be from a talent enablement skills perspective. We think of it as, and this is a great quote, right? Technology makes innovation possible, but talent makes innovation happen, right? So no amount of AI or ML in the end can invent itself. It needs to still be invented by people who understand the business, who understand the customers and the broader market. And in general, we see a very high level of digital fluency required. Planners would have to basically become data scientists, right? So it's a citizen data scientist mindset, where it's going to be a very human-machine blended workplace, right? You're seeing this in warehouses and shop floors already, and it's working very well, but it'll become more and more pervasive in planning. What it means is, from a skill set perspective, and I'm sure most of you get this already, The skills that you really need to pick up are lots of machine learning, all the models out there, whether they are neural networks or gradient boosting trees or just all the new models coming up. Stay on top of this field. How to do model training, solution quality monitoring to make sure that not just at a point in time, 10 data scientists got together and produced a great prediction, but how to keep that prediction as precise as possible ongoing. Focus will be more on planners doing scenario modeling, trade-off analysis, exception management, risk analysis, right? Less and less the mundane heavy lifting and more the value-added. This also means planners will become sort of more and more business enablers, people who are working very closely with sales and marketing, with finance, and just looking at risk, looking at demand opportunities, looking at supply sensing, supply shaping, just every opportunity to eliminate waste and grab additional opportunities. So it's almost like focus away from the function and more on the business, focus away from the spreadsheets and more on the machine learning. So with that, let's just try to wrap this up quickly so we leave some time for Q&A. I just wanted to make sure you understood GitaCloud, who we are. We are headquartered in Pleasanton in California. We have global presence in US. We are incorporated in Canada as well. And also we have a team in India. We have reseller system integrator partnerships with leading enterprise software providers like SAP or Kinaxis or many others. We have helped customers globally, many in US. We've been in Europe, Middle East, Asia. From a competency perspective, we focus on this planning space. But now moving more and more into the autonomous planning, more ML-powered advanced analytics, not just the basic spreadsheet in the cloud type manual planning. So it means that we're going into more and more demand sensing and shaping demand optimization. And demand optimization basically means to shape demand away from products where there are supply issues or capacity issues. Supply network planning and optimization, multi-echelon inventory optimization, response management, the kind of control tower we talked about to do order-based planning and keeping all the customer orders in the right priorities and customer service despite challenges. And then synchronizing this planning of sales order confirmations with production scheduling, with transportation scheduling, make sure the whole network orchestration occurs. And then supply chain control tower, the visibility, the root cause analysis, if a change has occurred, why wasn't it seen before? What is the impact of this change? What could we do about it? Allowing the engine to show a range of options and letting the planner auto simulate on top and then pick one and move. As I said before, I founded the company in 2015. The mission we've been on is solving hard problems and delivering exceptional value to the stakeholders within the company and shareholders outside. So we don't want to just automate manual processes, the current thinking. We want to really leverage the next gen technologies and deliver the next level of performance. We cover many industries. So we've gone across consumer electronics, high-tech semiconductor, industrial machinery and components, automotive. So from a customer's perspective, we work with Tesla Motors to Epson to large groups in India like Vedanta Group and so on. We have worked with consumer products companies like Unilever or life sciences like Varian Medical, and also with the energy and natural resources sector in oil and gas and mining and chemical. Bottom line, what we do applies to a lot of industries and a lot of customers reach out to us. So it just helps tremendously to be able to see underlying common themes and patterns in these widely differing industries. And offerings, we cover the full gamut of helping customers discover what their transformation charter should look like, helping them develop roadmaps, doing full business case development, doing value pilots where we take a reasonable amount of their data and show a data-driven bottoms-up business case to say, why should you? What kind of value can this enable? Whether that's inventory reduction or higher on-time delivery or better forecast accuracy and so on. We obviously do a bulk of our work in terms of implementations and rollouts and helping with the PMO and change management pieces. We also help companies do sort of managed value delivery services. So after they've gone live, keeping the model, AI/ML model, fine-tuned for life, working with them to make sure all the relevant changes in their environment, additional data streams are ingested. And we do value assurance services where we can help companies set up planning centers of excellence or track value that's coming out of these solutions, making sure users are adopting these solutions. So hopefully this gives you a perspective on the company. Here, some details on our internship program. We have decided on focus areas for this year to be machine learning, power demand sensing and shipping, response and supply optimization on an order-based planning basis, synchronized planning, which is SAP's term for combining production scheduling and sales order planning together, and supply chain control tower. So what would you be doing if you decided to participate in a program like this? You will be able to learn solutions like SAP IBP and develop innovation assets in these areas. So think of it as you'll be able to generate a demand sensing model which shows how social media feed, weather, events, information, downstream inventory in the channel, all of this can be ingested to generate a very precise demand signal and how that's better than just relying on the past. You will also be able to work on customer engagements, both during the pre-sales stage. So if we are talking to customers, collecting requirements, doing demonstrations or running proof of concepts, you'll be able to help with that. And also full delivery implementations where for the right folks, we'll be happy to even place them on our delivery projects, initially shadowing and then actively contributing. Internship models, we have a part-time model where you can go 3 to 6 months this spring and summer. If you want to spend 20 hours a week, for example, in spring and full 40 hours in summer, you can. If you just want to do full 40 hours in summer, that's fine too. What we are looking for is a natural domain fit. This should be something that truly excites you. Supply chain should be something you find naturally interesting, and a passion for advanced analytics space. So if you've already dabbled in R and Python, you've started thinking about a career in AI/ML advanced analytics space, that's the kind of fit we are looking for. If you are more thinking of just doing web applications or something else, then this probably would not be a good fit. And the rest two are soft skills. We're basically looking for people who are very outcome-centric, very smart, very driven. So they're not just going to come in and say, well, what can I learn? But also, how can I add value? How can I give back to the company? And a very team player attitude. We have a very friendly, very family-like culture in the company. So we like people who are very outgoing, very enthusiastic, easy to work with, positive personality. From a next steps perspective, I would recommend doing some research on GitaCloud. You can go to our website, or you can also Google GitaCloud YouTube channel and consume some of the webinars we've done, some of the customer testimonials that are out there. And then if you think this might be interesting, you can send your resume directly to me at this email.